Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Absolute Scenes YouTube channel. This is an extra bit of content for everybody, little bonus. As you watched the video yesterday, where we went through our best ever, or most deserving 20 teams being in the Premier League, we're now going to go through our least deserving teams. So, Billy, kick us off with your first six, please.
So I've got Derby, Sunderland, Watford, Huddersfield, Norwich, and QPR. They might not be the least in terms of the least ones, but they're the first six names I've got written down.
Yeah, so again, I haven't got them in a particular order, apart from the bottom three. We've said going be the least deserving teams ever. So my top six then are West Bromwich Albion, number one.
Right. I knew that was coming.
Yeah, Cardiff City, Blackpool, Derby County, Swindon Town, and Oldham Athletic. So those two, Swindon and Oldham, I put in, despite having very little knowledge of their, I think they only had one season each in the Premier League very early on. Swindon Town would have been under Glenn Hoddle. Oldham, I've just looked at their Premier League season. They did win about 12 games or so. They even beat Liverpool and Aston Villa. This is a 1993 Aston Villa.
Yeah.
The last 3 games of the season they won, so against Villa, Liverpool, and Southampton. So they weren't as bad as some of the other teams, but go on.
As a caveat, because I had I've marked down who you've said. So I had a few of those teams, but in particular Swindon and Oldham, they both played when the league was it the first league where it was slightly larger. Yeah. There wasn't the 20 teams. So I know Oldham I think they got to 40 points. They're not. I didn't put them in purely because I had because they got to 40, and that's the magical number. So they got to 40 points. So as far as I'm concerned, they've survived. Whereas obviously they played more games. Whereas other teams on this list have had far lower. I was looking at like the lowest total they've had and stuff. Whereas Oldham have only played in one, like you say, one season. They got to 40. Which in most seasons now would have kept them up, and they had, like you said, I think they had a pretty decent win record. They didn't have that bad of goals conceded and stuff like that. But yeah, any other teams there, Tom, that you want to talk about? Obviously, I think we'll leave West Brom probably because I think.
I think I mentioned it in the previous one. There's a couple of other teams that I've got in there for just annoying as a fan to not watch them push. Well, not. It's not annoying to watch Albion not push on, but there's certain other teams like Charlton Athletic, for example, who are not in my list.
Not in mine either.
They're very guilty of being comfortably 7th or 8th in the Premier League for a long time and then having loftier ambitions and then it coming back to bite them in the backside. So go through your next 6 then, Billy.
Just before we go on, Tom, obviously it may be, Derby, I think a lot of people will have them in there just because they have the lowest, didn't they? They're probably one of the worst teams in terms of that. So out of the teams that you said, I'll go, I had Blackpool, Cardiff, Swindon I had as well, and Derby just said Cardiff. Going on to about Cardiff, I don't know how many teams I've just named there, Tom, but Cardiff and Blackpool, Cardiff in particular, obviously being in Wales and stuff, they're not my team, so they're probably my equivalent of West Brom, if anything. I know a lot of my friends around here are glad when they do abysmal, which is probably similar to your sort of thing, and they were atrocious and stuff like that, especially when they came up that season and they had the owner changed their kit to red, their home kit to red instead of it being the normal bluebird blue and things like that. So antics off the pitch in particular. We're doing that. QPR, in terms of, I put them in earlier because of their wages and stuff like that. That they were paying, and Watford, the amount of sackings, especially in recent times. So things like that off the pitch in particular. So who have you got, Tom? If you give us your next group,
there's one that I'm going to put a star by because I want to talk about them. But Birmingham, Bradford, Huddersfield, Bournemouth, Bournemouth are going in my bottom 3. Spoiler alert. So Birmingham, Bradford, Huddersfield, Portsmouth, Palace, Fulham. Yeah. So the one I put a star by was Bradford because they had those 2 seasons very early on in the 21st century because they actually got promoted at Molineux. So they never. I always used to think, Bradford must have been this big team in the 50s or the 60s or something. But they've only ever played 2 seasons in the top flight, and that was in 2000 to 2002 or whatever it was, 99 to 2001. and they stayed up on the last game of the season by beating Liverpool. I seem to remember in 2000, and then they just completely flopped the following season. But they managed, I don't know how, but they played in the Intertoto Cup as well, whether it's through that fair play thing. So although they were, and also remember they had that player who used to dye his hair like weird, really weird colours.
I can't remember his name.
I can't remember his name either. And they had like a young Dean Windass and stuff. So even though they were bad, perhaps that's why they're in mid-table for me as a cult sort of team. I liked them, but they were really bad.
Tom, I know this is going to be very poor in terms of quality now, but can you just say them again? Because I'm marking them off. I think you did it last time. I'm marking off the ones that you've said as well. So go through them again.
City.
Yeah, got
Birmingham
that.
City, Bradford, Huddersfield. Because Huddersfield, similar to Bradford, although they did stay up, was not a glamour story. Either season. They were absolutely abysmal. Portsmouth had a couple of, just overspent and, rubbish. Crystal Palace, horrible ground, horrible to get to. I got punched by a steward there, so didn't like that. And Fulham, because they have a neutral end.
Neutral end. Okay, because so I had Portsmouth were in mine as well, for the same reasons. I'd missed them off when I was looking through why I'd put like wages and stuff like that. Fulham, I haven't put in. They've survived, and Bradford as well. Fulham for the, like we just said, obviously in terms of the UEFA Cup and stuff like that. But in other teams, I have snuck them in, which will become controversial. But yeah, they survived. And Bradford, I forgot. I'll just be honest. I completely, I missed them out. I forgot to put them in. So I've go through Ipswich. I had just because they
finished fifth.
They did finish fifth, but they also were playing within the 40-game season, so I had them in. They probably were my country. Yeah, they played. I put a star next to their name.
I think they must have had two spells then, because I think they probably were in the Premier League at the very beginning, and then when they came back in the very, very late 90s or early 2000s, they finished fifth under, I can see his face, the Scottish bloke George Burley, I think he was. Anyway, they finished fifth and they played in the Europa League.
Go with that, Tom.
European Cup.
In terms of I put them in because they conceded the most goals they conceded in a Premier League season was 93, which is quite abysmal. And they went on a winless streak for 13 games. They had one of the records for one of the longest winless streaks up until recently. So I was like, and they had a losing streak of 8. So I was like, well, they're not fantastic when they got relegated. So purely for when they got relegated that season in particular, I put them down because they only got 27 points as well.
They've got the record as well for the biggest defeat, haven't they?
Yeah, so a accumulation of those things. When they were good, they were good. And that's what a lot of teams I've got in here. It was that one season when they were terrible. So then I've got Ipswich. I also had West Brom, as you'll be happy to hear, Tom. Hull City, Reading, and Barnsley. They were the next few
Barnsley?
teams I'll go up to. Yeah,
I haven't got Barnsley in mine. Perhaps I should have put Barnsley in instead of somebody like Fulham. But Fulham have got a neutral end, so...
Yeah, that's fair enough. So I don't know how many that's up to, but I'll run through them all again at the end. So I think I've not got... So I've got... I'll just go through the teams I've got left now. So I've got Bolton. Despite us bigging them up last time, I put them in. Forest, I've put in.
Oh.
Middlesbrough, I've got in.
Yeah.
Villa.
Oh, in the worst.
These are now. I'm at but this again just for that abysmal season where they did get relegated. And Leicester, I think that takes me up to 20.
You've got a champion of the Premier League in your worst Premier League 20. Explain yourself.
Purely for when they got relegated that season, they've been relegated 3 times. You know, Blackburn, even though they've won it, they obviously I think they've only been relegated once, haven't they? Maybe twice.
Twice, I think they have.
Whereas Leicester have obviously gone down, 3 times they've gone down. And when they went down, they were awful. So they've only just crept in. And the 2 teams I had that on for when they were abysmal were Wolves and Burnley. So I think probably a bit of bias is why Leicester have got in. And like I said, I forgot Bradford. So Bradford probably will go in instead of them as well. But so who have you got left, Tom?
So I've got Middlesbrough, Norwich City, Watford, Hull, Bolton, and Reading. And then I've got three more. So I've got my Bolton were part of my bottom three.
Yeah, and
Bournemouth. Stoke were part of my bottom three, and Bournemouth, purely because Reading came up. They're still the best Championship team to come up in terms of their points haul. 106 points they got in the Championship, but then never really cemented themselves as a Premier League team. I think the longest sort of spell that they might have had would have been about maybe 3 consecutive seasons. And they've been a bit of a yo-yo team. Stoke were just abysmal to watch for so long under Pulis.
What about the throw? The Rory Delap
Well,
throw?
that's what I was just going to say. You can see a sort of ingenuity in the game, thinking, right, well, we've got Rory Delap who can throw it really well. But then he was really boring. Same goes for Bolton. Although what Sam Allardyce did in the early 2000s in the way that he revolutionised the way they use technology in football teams now, I think it has to be mentioned. And they did have a couple of amazing players like Ivan Campo and JJ Okocha. However, obviously, I don't know. It was all very flash in the pan because now they're in League Two and Wolves fans hate them, so that's another reason.
Yeah, and I put them in, and I obviously put them in the most deserved team. So when they were good, and it's similar, for a couple of Middlesbrough, probably this you could say the same, and Forest as well, especially earlier before probably the and Villa. But like Bolton, when they went. They've had 3 relegations. They've had a lot of goals. The most goals they've conceded. They didn't score many as well. It was, they were always win 1-0 and stuff like that. So you could argue, even though they like we said last time, they've set the blueprint for a lot of teams to be hard to break down. But then when they did get broken down, they got absolutely battered. Yeah. And Chelsea fans always have a special place for them because obviously that's where we won our first Premier League title. But yeah.
A couple of other teams that have just come to me. So Wigan are one that were forever down the bottom of the table. There was a group of teams about 5 or 6, well, probably 10 years ago now, that they always just seem to be the same teams, always battling to stay up. And somehow all of them stayed up, and it would be 3 other teams that went down. Like Blackburn of that sort of era, Wigan.
You've got Brighton now.
Brighton are in that mould now. Bournemouth were in it for a little bit. Yeah, bloody Bournemouth. But
I think when I'd done this, I think Brighton obviously have never been relegated as things stand. So that's why they've been exempt because they've never been relegated. And Bournemouth, I think, they've only just been relegated this season, haven't they? Because obviously they've never been up before. So I was, even though a lot of teams managed to survive, Bournemouth, I think, have been out for this season in particular. But do you want to, unless there's any other teams, Tom, you want to talk about? And Norwich is one that I want to briefly touch on, and good old Delia. Obviously, I think that's an iconic thing. And this season in particular, they were, as great as they were at the start, obviously they were really good going forward and had some shock upsets. But I think when they've come up, they've always, collapsed, I think, and always needed a rally to go back up again. Was it Hull? No, it wasn't. Was it Hull City with Phil Brown, with Jimmy Bullard? A lot of these teams have given us iconic moments, but not enough. This isn't the top 20 iconic moments team. This is obviously the teams which have had terrible seasons. In my opinion, that's what I've looked at. I've looked at in terms of their season in particular. If they've done,
you've done it on statistics. I've vibed it.
Yeah, which I think is probably true to our personalities as well.
Exactly. Well, let us know in the comments down below if you agree, disagree, and tune back in tomorrow for our Premier League season predictions. And we'll subscribe to the channel if you must, and we'll be seeing you. Bye.